A white man adopts a young black child from the adoption center, only for the parents of the white man to disapprove, abandoning both the white man and black child. This story shows racial prejudice, instant karma, and justice served. Comment where you're watching from and let us know your thoughts of the story. The world seemed to slow down as Michael stared at his phone, reading the message from the adoption agency again. Marcus is ready to come home. 5 simple words that would change his life forever. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with the most infectious smile he'd ever seen. In just 2 days, Marcus would be his son. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. As a single 28-year-old white man wanting to adopt a young black child, Michael had faced countless questions, intense scrutiny, and more than a few raised eyebrows. But from the moment he met Marcus at the group home, something just clicked. Maybe it was the way the boy immediately showed him his favorite book, proudly reading each word with careful determination. Or perhaps it was how Marcus asked him, with complete seriousness, if he knew how to make real mac and cheese, not the funny orange kind. Now, sitting in his newly child-proofed apartment, surrounded by toys, clothes, and everything else the parenting book said he needed, only one hurdle remained: telling his parents. They knew he was in the process of adopting, but he'd never specified details about Marcus. It wasn't that he was ashamed, quite the opposite. He wanted to protect the precious bubble of joy surrounding this moment before reality could intrude. His mother's weekly Sunday dinner would be the perfect opportunity. He'd already missed the last 2, claiming work obligations, but he couldn't delay any longer. Marcus would be home in 2 days, and his parents deserved to know they were about to become grandparents. The familiar scent of pot roast greeted Michael as he walked up the driveway of his childhood home. His father, Robert, was in his usual spot, tending to his prized rose bushes with meticulous care. Robert straightened up when he saw his son, wiping soil from his hands. "Look who finally remembered where we live," Robert called out, but his smile was warm. "Your mother was about to send out a search party." "Sorry, Dad. Work's been crazy with the new project." The lie felt heavy on Michael's tongue. "But I'm here now, and I actually have some news to share." Robert clapped him on the shoulder as they headed inside. Sarah, Michael's mother, was in the kitchen, her graying hair pulled back in its usual neat bun. She practically squealed when she saw him, pulling him into a flour-dusted hug. "Finally, I was beginning to think you'd forgotten how to use a phone." She held him at arm's length, studying his face. "You look tired, sweetheart. Are you eating properly?" "I'm fine, Mom. Actually, I'm better than fine. I have something important to tell you both." Her eyes lit up. "The adoption? Did you hear something?" "Yes." Michael pulled out his phone, hands slightly shaking as he pulled up Marcus's photo. "I'd like you to meet your grandson. This is Marcus. He's 6, brilliant, loves dinosaurs and space, and he's coming home on Tuesday." The silence that followed felt endless. Sarah's smile froze, then slowly faded as she stared at the photo. Robert leaned in closer, his expression unreadable. "He's—" Sarah started, then stopped. "Black," Robert finished flatly. Michael squared his shoulders. "Yes, he is. And he's also sweet, funny, and already reading above his grade level. He's perfect, and he's going to be my son." Sarah set the phone down carefully, as if it might burn her. "Michael, honey, have you really thought this through? It's not that it's just, there are so many challenges." "What your mother's trying to say," Robert cut in, his voice hard, "is that this is a mistake. You can't possibly understand what you're getting yourself into." "I've spent months getting to know Marcus," Michael said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I've taken classes, talked to other transracial adoptive parents, done everything possible to prepare. I'm not naive about the challenges, but I'm ready for them." "Ready?" Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're going to make both your lives harder for no reason. There are plenty of children who would be a better fit." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "A better fit? You mean white children?" "Don't put words in your father's mouth," Sarah snapped. "We're thinking of what's best for everyone, including this child. He needs a family that can understand his background, his culture, I am that family, Michael insisted. I'm committed to learning, to making sure he stays connected to his culture and heritage. I love him, Mom. He's my son. No! Robert's voice thundered through the kitchen. He's not, and if you go through with this foolishness, you're not our son either. Sarah gasped. Robert! I mean it. Robert's face was flushed with anger. If you bring that child into this family, you're choosing to walk away from us. Is that what you want? The pot roast was burning. They could smell it, but nobody moved to save it. Michael's hands were shaking now for a different reason. What I want, he said slowly, is for my parents to love their grandson as much as I already do. But if you're asking me to choose between my son and your prejudice, that's not even a choice at all. He turned and walked out, his mother's broken, Michael, wait, following him down the hallway. The screen door slammed behind him with a finality that echoed through his bones. As he drove away, he caught one last glimpse of his childhood home in the rearview mirror. And for the first time in his life, it looked like a stranger's house. His phone buzzed again as he pulled into his apartment complex. Another message from the adoption agency. Marcus asked about you today. He wants to know if you're still planning to make him real mac and cheese when he comes home. Through his tears, Michael smiled. In 2 days, he would become a father, and real mac and cheese would be just the beginning. 6 months had passed since Michael brought Marcus home, and the boys' laughter now filled every corner of their apartment. It was Saturday morning, pancake day, and Marcus sat at the kitchen counter, carefully arranging chocolate chips into a smiley face on his breakfast. His small legs swung back and forth, bare feet tapping against the stool's metal base in a steady rhythm. Dad, can we go to the park after breakfast? Marcus asked, his voice muffled by a mouthful of pancake. I want to show you how high I can swing now. The word dad still made Michael's heart skip a beat. It had taken Marcus 3 months to use it, and each time felt like a gift. Sure, buddy, but remember to swallow before you talk, okay? The morning light streaming through the kitchen window caught the silver frame on the wall, their first photo together, taken the day Marcus came home. Next to it hung Marcus's latest report card, proudly displaying his improving grades. The refrigerator was a gallery of artwork, each piece signed with increasingly neat handwriting, to Dad, love Marcus. But amid the joy of their new life together, Michael felt the weight of his parents' absence. Every achievement, every milestone, every proud moment came with a shadow of sadness. His mother had tried calling once, 2 months ago, but hung up when he answered. His father's silence remained absolute. At the park, Michael watched as Marcus conquered the swing set, each pump of his legs taking him higher. Other parents smiled and nodded in their direction, but Michael noticed the occasional double takes, the whispered conversations. He'd learned to ignore them, focusing instead on Marcus's delighted shrieks of, "Look how high I am, Dad." And the real challenge came later that afternoon at the grocery store. Marcus was helping pick out ingredients for dinner when an elderly woman approached them in the produce section. "Oh, how wonderful," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Are you mentoring today? It's so nice to see people giving back to the community." Before Michael could respond, Marcus looked up from the tomatoes he was examining. "He's not my mentor, he's my dad." The woman's smile tightened. "Oh, I see." She hurried away, leaving Marcus staring after her with confused eyes. "Dad?" Marcus's voice was smaller now. "Why did she think you weren't my real dad?" Michael knelt down beside his son, their cart forgotten. Some people don't understand that families can look different from each other and still be real families. But what matters is that we know we're a real family, right? Marcus nodded slowly, but his earlier excitement had dimmed. That night, after tucking Marcus into bed, Michael found himself staring at his phone, thumb hovering over his parents' number. Just then, a text from Marcus's teacher appeared. "Mr. Thompson, the Father's Day celebration is next Friday. Marcus is very excited to share his presentation about his hero you, but he mentioned wanting his grandparents to come. Should I add them to the invitation list?" Michael's throat tightened. The Father's Day celebration? How had he forgotten? Every student would present a project about their father or father figure, followed by a special lunch with extended family. Marcus had been working on his presentation for weeks, carefully cutting out pictures and practicing his speech. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus insisted on wearing his fancy shirt, a button-down that matched one of Michael's, and practiced his presentation every night before bed. Michael watched his son's confidence grow with each rehearsal, even as his own heart ached at the thought of empty seats where grandparents should be. The morning of the celebration, they arrived early to set up Marcus's display board. Other families began filtering in, the classroom filling with proud grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Marcus kept glancing at the door between practice runs of his speech. "Dad," he whispered, straightening his collar for the 10th time, "do you think they'll come if we just wish really hard?" Michael opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a commotion at the classroom door drew their attention. His heart stopped. There, looking uncertain but determined, stood his mother, clutching his father's arm. Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed, and Robert's face was a storm of emotions. They had come. Marcus tugged at Michael's sleeve, his eyes wide. "Dad, are those my grandparents?" The answer stuck in Michael's throat as his parents took a tentative step forward, the distance of 6 months stretching between them like an ocean. Everything hung on what would happen next. "Class," Marcus's teacher called out, "it's time to begin our presentations. Marcus Thompson, would you like to go first?" Marcus stood frozen, his carefully practiced speech forgotten as he looked between his father and the strangers who might become his grandparents. The silence in the classroom grew thick with anticipation. The classroom fell silent as Marcus approached the front, his small hands gripping his presentation board. He glanced back at Michael, who gave him an encouraging nod, then at his grandparents, who had taken seats in the back row. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue while Robert sat rigidly, his expression unreadable. "My hero is my dad," Marcus began, his voice gaining strength with each word. "Some people think he can't be my real dad because we look different, but they're wrong. Being real isn't about looking the same, it's about love." Sarah's quiet sob echoed through the classroom. Robert's hands tightened on his knees. "When I first met my dad at the group home, he didn't just ask me questions like the other grown-ups. He sat on the floor with me and read my favorite book about space. He didn't even mind when I corrected his pronunciation of nebula." Marcus grinned, earning chuckles from the audience. "He learned to do my hair properly, even though it took lots of practice. He messed up a lot at first, but he never gave up." Marcus pointed to a photo on his board showing Michael's early attempts at cornrows. "He found a barber who could teach him, and now he's really good at it." Michael remembered those early morning struggles, YouTube tutorials playing on his phone as he tried to get the parts straight, determined to help his son feel confident and proud of his appearance. "My dad takes me to the Black Heritage Museum every month, and we're learning about important people in history together. He joined a support group for parents like him, so he can learn how to be the best dad for me." Marcus's voice swelled with pride. "He says we're learning together, and that's what makes us special." Robert shifted in his seat, his stern expression softening almost imperceptibly. "But the bravest thing my dad did was choose me, even when it was hard." Marcus paused, his next words coming out slower, more deliberate. "Even when some people didn't understand, he told me that family isn't about what's easy, it's about what's right." Sarah was openly crying now, her hand clutched in Robert's. Michael noticed his father's eyes glistening. "So my dad is my hero because he showed me that love is stronger than fear. That family is something you build together." Marcus lifted his chin. "And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open your heart, even when you're scared." The applause that followed was thunderous. As other students began their presentations, Robert quietly stood and made his way to where Michael sat. His movements were stiff, uncertain, but his eyes never left his grandson. Robert's voice cracked. "He's extraordinary." "Yes," Michael replied softly. "He is." "I was wrong," Robert whispered, the words seeming to physically pain him. "About everything. I was so afraid of what I didn't understand that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. My son becoming a better man than I ever was." Sarah joined them, pulling Michael into a fierce hug. "We've missed so much," she cried. "6 months of our grandson's life. 6 months of your life. Can you ever forgive us?" Marcus finished arranging his presentation board and turned around, catching sight of the family embrace. He approached cautiously, his eyes wide with hope. Robert knelt down, moving slowly as if afraid of frightening the boy. "Hello, Marcus. I'm your grandfather, and I'd very much like to learn how to pronounce Nebula correctly." Marcus's face lit up. "Really? I can teach you. Dad and I have lots of space books at home, and I'm learning about constellations too." "We'd love to hear all about them," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. Maybe over dinner? If that's okay with your dad?" Michael looked at Marcus, who was practically vibrating with excitement, then at his parents, their faces etched with regret and hope. "How about Sunday?" he suggested. "Mom still makes pot roast, right?" "Every week," Robert replied, his voice thick. "Though I hear you make some pretty impressive mac and cheese." Marcus bounced on his toes. "It's the best, not the funny orange kind. Real mac and cheese." Later that evening, as Michael tucked Marcus into bed, his son asked sleepily, "Dad, are we a bigger family now?" Michael smoothed Marcus's hair, remembering how his father had watched them all afternoon, how his mother had hung on every word Marcus spoke, how their goodbye hugs had lasted just a little longer than necessary. "Yeah, buddy, we are. And you know what? You helped build that bridge. With my presentation. With your heart." Michael kissed his forehead. "Sometimes love is the strongest building material there is." Marcus yawned, snuggling deeper into his covers. "Dad, can we have Grandpa and Grandma over tomorrow too? Grandpa said he wants to see my whole spacebook collection." "Sure, buddy. We've got a lot of time to make up for." Michael stood in the doorway, watching his son drift off to sleep, and all the time in the world to build something beautiful. Outside, the stars twinkled over their apartment complex. Michael's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Thank you for giving us a second chance, for showing us what family really means. We love you both so much." He smiled, typing back 3 simple words that bridged the distance of 6 months and opened the door to countless tomorrows. "We love you."